Hi. Hello, everybody. Good morning to some of you and good afternoons to others. Welcome to the launch of the study, Solar Energy in Brazil. Which are the barriers and opportunities for women professionals in the field? I am Paula Scheidt, Project Manager at GIZ, and I will be moderating this panel discussion. First of all, I would like to thank you, all of you, for taking your time to be here today with us. And I can assure you that it will be worth it. During our event, you are welcome to share your comments and leave your questions in our chat. I'm so honored to be joined here by a very special team of experts on this sector that I would like to introduce to you now with a round of quick hellos. So let's start with Celia García-Baños, Associated Program Officer at the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. Hi, Celia.
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me.
Irene Giner-Reichl, former Austrian ambassador in Brazil and president of Global Women's Network for the Energy Transition, GWNET. Hi, Irene.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Eduarda Zangbe, Energy and Gender Consultant at C4All and member of Women in Energy Network from Columbia University. Hi, Eduarda.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
We also have here my colleague, João Fávaro, Senior Project Advisor at GIZ. Hi, João.
Hello there.
And Natalia Chaves, Professional Women in the Solar Energy Sector, Project Assistant at Brazil-German Chamber of Commerce and Industry, AHK, in Rio de Janeiro, and one of the co-founders of MESol. Hi, Natalia.
Hi, Paula. Hi, everyone.
And professional women in the solar energy sector as well, Kathleen Schneider, Director of the Ideal Institute and one of the co-founders of MESol. Hi, Kathleen.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here with you all today.
So now, I don't know if all of you know about that, but women only hold 32% of renewable energy jobs worldwide. And the sector is expected to generate up to 42 million jobs globally. If you look at solar energy alone, which is the most prominent renewable energy sector, it has generated over $38 billion in business from 2012 to 2020 in Brazil, and has created only 224,000 jobs positions, according to the Brazilian Solar Energy Association, ABSolar. However, we still lack disaggregated gender information, studies, and data, which are crucial to a fair development of the sector regarding gender issues. This study that's been launching today in its English version is an important step to close this gap, close this gap, and it was only possible because of the joint effort of C40 Cities Finance Facility, the Brazilian Women's Network in Solar Energy, MESol Network, the German Cooperation for Sustainable Development through GIZ, and AHK Rio. So let me introduce my colleague João Fávaro to talk a little bit to us about the context of the development of this study. Please, João, can you tell us a little bit more?
Hi, hello. Good morning from Brazil to all of you. It is with pleasure that we have this new study in Brazil about opportunities and barriers for women in our solar energy sector. The study was co-founded by the German and the UK governments, the US fund, and the private fund CIF. The C40 Cities Finance Facility, which is a program co-implemented by C40 and GIZ, supports cities to seek financing for green infrastructure projects that implements climate mitigation and adaptation actions. One of the requirements of such funding is that funds such as Green Climate Fund, GCF, and banks such as World Bank, IDB, already have gender guidelines for infrastructure projects. And during the execution of gender analysis for the supported projects that we have in Curitiba and Rio, which are solar projects, we verified the need for more data on gender in the solar sector. Thus, with this study, CFF also intends to support the sector research as a way to promote the gender agenda in the Brazilian solar sector, to strengthen then the participation of women in the industry. I would like to thank MESol and AHK for the great work that they did in making this very important study for the inclusion of the gender in the solar energy sector. And I thank all of our invitees also from IRENA, Columbia University, and GWNET. Thank you very much.
Thank you, João. And now let's meet the women who already are in the sector here in Brazil and find out more details about this study. So, hi, Kathleen. Can you tell us a little bit more how the study was conducted and which were the methodologies used? And regarding the main results, who are the professional women in the solar sector in Brazil?
Sure. Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, good evening. So yes, the study used two different approaches as a methodology to raise information that we are aiming for this study. So the first approach was an analysis of a secondary data collected from the annual social information report, which is one of the main sources of information of the Brazilian formal labor market. So through this approach, allowed us to raise and draw the profile of formally registered women professional working in the solar sector here in Brazil, especially in the private sector. And a second approach that we had was raising primary data directly from the professional women working in the sector through an online survey. This online survey main purpose was to understand the context of these women and also hear from them what were their main needs and challenges to enter and remain in the solar sector here in Brazil. This survey was open through two weeks, 10 days actually, during January this year, and we received 251 answers complete. And these answers, they were evaluated and compiled, and they are presented in this report that we are launching today. So regarding what these women answered, these women that participated in the survey, we raised their profile a little bit. We understand a little bit who are they. So we recognize that most of them, they are quite young. So 50% of them, they are in between 18 to 30 years old. And as for skin color, the vast majority of them, they self-declare themselves as white women, and only 25% as brown women, nearly 5% as black women, and 1.2 as yellow, and 0.4 as indigenous women. We also asked them what was the area of the solar energy sector that they worked at, because the study, it was directed to solar energy as an overall. We didn't specify any technology here. So most of them, 90%, said that they work directly with solar PV, which makes a lot of sense because that's technology that's developing the most here in Brazil in the context of solar energy. Other women also said that they work with energy efficiency associated with solar PV, with electromobility associated with solar PV, and also storage. And many others, some others actually said they work with solar thermal and concentrated solar as well. We also asked them for how long they are working the sector, and 60% of them said they are working the sector for the past 3 years only. And that also makes quite some sense when we cross-check with the context of solar PV development here in Brazil, which had a boom in 2018 to 2019. So these women, they inserted themselves in the sector mainly when this boom of PV was happening here in the country. And we also asked them what is the sector that they are working at, and most of them, 70%, said they work in the private sector, And others, 11% nearly, said they work with education institutions, and 5% in the third sector, such as associations, foundations, NGOs. And others also work in international organizations, government, public corporations, and so on. And finally, to conclude a little bit of their profile, another very interesting aspect that we found is that these women, they have a really high level of education degrees. So 40% of them, they said that they have at least an undergrad complete, and another 50% of them, they have at least a specialization, such as master's, PhD, or post-PhD. So 90% of them have at least an undergrad degree completely, and half of them have at least a specialization. So that's a very high level degree that they have also, that we found it out.
Thank you, Kathleen. A lot of numbers here. And maybe if you are interested to get all the details of the numbers, you can check in our chat. You will find the study to access and download and see all the details. And now I would like to talk a little bit more about money and career. And for example, what is the current economic situation of professional women in this field? And how does this situation influence their professional growth? So I would like to speak now with Natalia. Hi again, Natalia. Please, can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Hi, Paula, thank you. And yes, as you said before, in Brazilian, there is a similar representation of women in the solar sector. It's about 32%. But looking to the annual report of social information, as Kathleen said, we could see that the number of women is in the sector is increasing, but there is a little bit difference in 2019, where the representation was about to 28%. But looking to highs data, we could saw some phenomena were reaffirmed as instruction, ascending careers, and also about salaries. So now I can share with you some data's information about solar sector in Brazil. About instruction, as Kathleen said, we also could see in the highest data that women represents more educated than men. In highest data, we could saw that 42% of those women have completed higher education, while men only 30% had it. In ascension and careers, we could see there is a positive trend of women who can ascend to management positions is about 6.9%. But when we are talking about the top board positions and directions, they only represent 0.7%. So here we could see the first barrier. Why is this woman's ascending to higher and less numbers position in the companies that were analyzed? So we also could see a very different percentage of how many women are achieving STEAM careers, like technical, science, and maths and engineering positions in companies. So we could saw that only 4.8% of women are achieving these positions in the companies that we saw in highest data. And also when we talk about salary, there is a very different position between male and female individuals, even if they have the same education and the same age. So from the first data we saw, there is a very less representation. Women also is given shows that women earn at least 30% less than men. So we could saw the similarities with the answers that the questionnaires that women answer to us with the data that is available in the social report from the companies that we saw. So from this, we could also give some recommendations that we will talk in the future here in this event.
Thank you, Natalia. And I would like to open a little bit more the discussion now to take a look in the international level and see how is Brazilian situation in contrast with the global one. So IRENA published a report with a gender perspective in renewable energy in 2019 and another on wind energy in 2020. Both studies are today the main reference about women working in the renewable energy sector around the world. Celia, considering your engagement in these two studies, what were the main outcomes that you observed 2 years after the launching of the first study?
Thank you very much. Well, Kathleen gave already some numbers. I'm going to give more numbers now, so I hope it's not too confusing. I just as a little bit of background, we have been trying to mainstream gender in our work, but as you mentioned, 2 years ago in 2020 and in 2019, actually, it's when we published the first dedicated report, and we based that as in similar methodology based on a survey and literature review. We tried to gather both quantitative and qualitative analysis. In terms of quantitative, based on what organizations from all over the world share the information, we can say, and I think Paula, you mentioned it before already, the 32% share of women in renewable energy, which is higher than the oil and gas sector, which accounts for 22% according to literature, and is way below the 44% that in general for the overall economy women are in the industry. Additionally, as you also mentioned, we did a subsequent analysis on selective technology, wind energy, and unfortunately, women's participation for that is quite lower, the 21% of the share, which again is similar to what the oil and gas sector is reporting. And is beyond the 32% number that is like a global average of the renewable energy sector. I think it's interesting to mention what is the different share of the different occupations and different job positions that this industry includes. So some more numbers again, in STEM, it's the participation of women is very low. It doesn't reach to 28% of the total. The non-STEM but still technical jobs, I think there's a lack of understanding of what the energy people tend to think it's only a STEM, but it's not. There's a lot of non-STEM positions, but still require, of course, technical skills and knowledge. Is the 35% of the share, which means it's even above the 32% of the average. But most of the jobs where women are positioned are in administrative duties, which, as we know, it's a great job, but unfortunately, the pay is normally tend to be lower. And this share is 45%, which again makes the average to compensate with the low participation in STEM. Additionally, as I mentioned, we also wanted to analyze what is the qualitative aspect, what are the barriers that women are facing in terms of entering in the workforce, remaining in the workforce, and advancing. And the main barriers that we found is that they were all related to cultural and social norms and the perception of gender roles, which again are driven by the cultural and social norms that makes people to take decisions and influence the fundamental decisions. The next most important barrier when talking about entering in the workforce was the prevailing hiring practices, followed by the lack of adequate awareness about both STEM and non-STEM career paths in renewable energy. Again, sometimes I think we lose the knowledge about what careers are available in the industries. and by difficulties in accessing professionals and personal networks, which are critical for entering many professions. I'm happy to see here Irene, who will be mentioning about GWNET, so I think we have that covered. Additionally, in terms of barriers to advance, it was flagged by the respondents that the glass ceiling is the most important barrier. And in fact, in most of the participating private sector firms, men represented at least 75% of board members, which is an incredibly high number. And other barriers include mobility requirements, demanding work schedules, lack of supportive workplace environments, flexible work hours, family-friendly measures, mentoring and network again, lack of training opportunities, etc. So being said this, I think it's quite aligned with what the results in Brazil as well are mentioning. What is the reason behind this, this unfortunate low number for gender? And 2 years later, I am also curious to see what is happening, especially after this disruptive COVID pandemic that we are all under, that has been disproportionately affecting women, unfortunately.
Thank you, Celia. Yeah, it's very important to mention COVID, as you said. And now, as we already saw a lot about the situations of women and the numbers and the barriers to close this gap, I think it's important to know from the women's what they think there is the needs and demands toward this way. So Kathleen, in Brazil, what were mentioned by the women who participate in the survey as the main needs and demands for the professional development in the solar energy sector?
Sure, yeah. So in the online survey, we also asked our respondents what were their main needs to develop themselves professionally in the sector, right? So what was mainly mentioned by them was professional training. So 40%, nearly 40% of them said that they needed professional training to improve their technical leadership and entrepreneurial skills. And this is quite interesting because, as I mentioned in the first question, is that these women, they have a really high education degree level, right? So it might indicate that these women might feel more insecure, that they are really insufficiently trained, right? So that was some observation that we brought here as well. And other needs that they mention a lot was greater equality in opportunities. And 10% of them said that they need more credibility to develop themselves better in the sector. Other aspects that were mentioned that's worthwhile bringing up here as well is strengthening networking and cooperation among professionals as a main need, and gender-sensitive work environment as well.
Thank you, Kathleen, for this more data, but very interesting to know by the perspective of the women, right? So, Irene, as Kathleen just mentioned, the main needs highlighted by the respondents were professional training, aiming to improve the technical and managerial capacity of companies, and the development of leadership and entrepreneurial skills, which are very important. So mentoring programs can be a stepping stone for these needs. We know GWNET is promoting mentoring programs for women working for the energy transition all around the globe. By the way, Natalia and Kathleen, they were mentees from the program in 2019, for those that don't know that. And could you, Irene, just comment a little bit about that program and what are the main outcomes you have been observing from? And how are these programs helping women to develop and enhance their professional skills?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. The Global Women's Network for the Energy Transition works in a two-pronged way. We support women who are already present in the sector through mentoring, knowledge transfer, and networking. And we also work to make the sector more inclusive and diverse through advocacy. And since you mentioned the mentoring programs, I think they have really become almost the approach that is most connected with our organization. It's quite a simple but very powerful concept. Experienced women leaders from a large variety of backgrounds and professions volunteer their time to accompany for a year as mentors a more junior mid-career woman, the mentee. And the Global Women's Network for the Energy Transition selects very carefully the most promising candidates from usually a large number of applications that we receive. And we then match the mentors again very carefully with the mentees. And we provide opportunities for peer interaction among the mentees. We address all logistical and other issues. And we also provide during the year-long program some structured knowledge transfer components. So in 2019, we had the global program that we started in its second edition, but then we were also asked to develop a program for members of the Global Wind Energy Council, which is now in its third year. And we are conducting regional programs for Latin America, Caribbean countries, for countries in the Middle East and Northern Africa, and members of the SICA group, which are sponsored by the GIZ. And we also have programs that are not regionally focused, but thematically focused on energy access, on clean cooking, energy storage. And I'm very happy to say that the feedback that we receive from the mentees and from the mentors is exceedingly encouraging, because it looks like a small support that is given to the women mentees, but that small support makes a big difference. It helps them to build professional networks. It helps them to gain confidence. The mentors point the mentees in important directions regarding professional development, and also give them a lot of good advice in terms of tactics and strategic career planning and so forth. And we also believe that it's very important for women to be more visible in the sector. As was pointed out by the study presenters, the women that are in the sector are already highly qualified, but often they are not given the credit for those qualifications. So the Global Women's Network has also created a platform that we call Women Expert in Energy platform, where women can self-register. It's a bit like LinkedIn. And this platform can be searched. So if the question arises, is there a good woman, specialized, I don't know, on energy access in the Caribbean, we can go to this platform, and anybody who is looking for such a person can go to the platform and search it. And very often excellent women can be identified that way. So I think it's a very important to combine the two approaches, to support women, but then also to give those women that are already in the sector visibility needed to prove the case that yes, indeed, there are lots and lots of excellent professional women in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. And we have some of them here right now, right?
Yes.
This is great.
It's wonderful.
And as you mentioned about networking, besides Kathleen mentioned about all these mentoring training necessary needs, Eduarda, I would like to hear from you because we know that the need for stronger network and cooperation among professionals was also highlighted by the women as something very important for their career development. And how do you see the importance of international and local networking promoting this strengthening?
Thank you, Paula. I think to answer this question, I'm going to build on what Irene was saying. She talked about a mentorship program in which we as C4All were also partners. So we have a cohort of women that are working together in clean cooking. And I think that when we talk about networking, we also have to consider that in these mentorship programs, most of the time you are given a valuable experience to network with your peers and also with your mentor, which usually lasts your entire life, your entire career, because these connections, they are made for a reason and they most of the time continue. So I think that that's where I would start answering the question. And I also think that networking is extremely important to find your first job in the sector. So, so in my case, for example, when you're in college and you're in that period close to graduation, you don't know which sector you're going to work with, you know what the things you like, but maybe you don't have that experience. Just being able to participate in energy-related events, even without having prior experience, is very important for you to get to know someone and demonstrate your passion. I think all of us who are involved in the energy sector, we're very passionate about it. So I think that early on, trying to get out of, your comfort zone and attending these events to demonstrate your eagerness to enter, I think is very important. And I also think that networking is not only for the entry level, but once you're in the sector, it's also really important for retention, because sometimes, women, they face problems related to, maternity and other, family constraints that may lead them to leave the industry and their jobs as a whole, because sometimes they're the heads of the household and they don't have anyone else to, to go for when they find a problem. So I think that within the workplace, it's very important to create, these connections and these small groups where they can share experiences. And this is the type of thing that even internationally, it's very interesting. And this is something I'm trying to do in one of my projects, which I'll explain shortly. But when you exchange this type of experience with women from other countries, somehow you feel like you're not alone, because these are challenges that are not only faced by Brazilian women, but women everywhere. And this is also like now transitioning to the project that was one of the reasons I was invited to be here today, because I've been in conversations with Kathleen and Natalia. So Columbia University, through the Center on Global Energy Policy, has a program called Women in Energy. And the idea is to invite more women students who are already involved in the energy sector to receive training, mentorship, professional development opportunities, and also networking with other more experienced women leaders in the area. And I'm trying to bring this project to Brazil with the help of the Rio Global Center. And the reason is because I see a lot of this movement happening here in the US, because I didn't mention, but I'm based in New York for now. And it's something that is starting in Brazil, thanks to Rede MESol and some other women-led groups in Brazil. But I think it's very important to not only have these networks, but ask ourselves, how can these networks of women work together? Because they are trying to tackle different parts of the energy sector, but at the same time, they have the same objectives of increasing the participation of women, increasing representation. So I think this is incredibly important. And then the last point I would bring in terms of strengthening networking and the importance of networking for the sector is having role models. And I think this is covered in the IRENA Gender Perspective Report, in which it's also very important for us, not only for the energy sector, but women in any sorts of careers in their lives, to be able to identify with other women in similar positions, and especially in leadership positions. Because one thing that you might have encountered in the report that you did is the fact that there are a lot of women in the energy sector, but only a few of them in the leadership positions. So they don't receive proper recognition, and sometimes even the ones that are in leadership positions are completely alone, because they attend meetings which they're the only female representatives. So it's important not to just have them in their positions, but also bring them, to the more junior energy workers, so that they know what are the challenges and how did this woman who's in this position now rose to a leadership status, which is very, very rare nowadays in many countries. But yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear about the experience and your point of view. Thank you, Eduarda. And I'd like to come back to Kathleen now and to the results of the study. So Kathleen, the women who participate in the online survey, they also answer about their perception of the main barriers that we already mentioned, a lot of them right now here, and these barriers to enter and to remain in the sector. Could you comment of the main findings of those aspects in the study?
Certainly. So as Irene said, we also asked them about their challenges to enter and to remain in the sector. And but these were open questions. So we received like open questions. We hear from them what they were like bringing up as their main challenges, and then we categorize those answers into categories that we identify as the main challenges. So when we asked them about getting to the solar sector, only 6% of them said that there are no barriers or challenges for entering the sector, and less than 1% of them didn't have an opinion to give. But the others, 92%, nearly 93%, they said the main factors they highlighted mainly in first place, male chauvinism and prejudice was the most challenge cited. And in second place, it was the lack of credibility. So here we brought some lines that these women wrote in this online survey, and I'm going to open some quotes here just to an exemplification of some lines that we received in the study. So open quotes here. We still face prejudice. More than once, I presented a solution to a client and I heard that women don't add anything technically, that they only discuss technically with men. And another line that we also receive, open quotes again, it's an extremely hostile area for women. There is a very explicit gender inequality. Entering a company or academia requires self-imposition every second, and this becomes tiresome, making one to leave for other areas that better shelter the position of a woman. And in the third place, another barrier very, very much mentioned was male predominance in the sector. So these were the main aspects brought for entering the sector. And when we asked about remaining in the sector, again, the most barriers highlighted were a lack of credibility in the first place this time, and second time, male chauvinism and prejudice again. And in the third place, most of them also mentioned fear, very few career advancement opportunities. So just as Celia brought in the IRENA report as well, we noticed that one of the main challenges most cited by women is gender norms, actually, as the most challenges to enter and remain in the sector. That's what we found as a conclusion from the report in those aspects.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen, for this very interesting to her and to her actually the voice of these women as you give some examples. So Eduarda, as a Brazilian woman is in early stage of your career and building up your professional path in the energy sectors overseas. Could you comment about your perception and experience on barriers to enter in the sector? And also, what were the opportunities and challenges you see for Brazilian women aiming to build a career in the energy sector abroad?
So I think that I felt very represented when I read the report yesterday, and I saw that some of the barriers include, for example, lack of knowledge, because I think that one of the reasons we don't have more women in the energy sector in Brazil is because, as I said, once you're in college, you don't necessarily identify with women working in the energy sector because there are barely any examples for us. And also because I think that the first thing that comes to mind when you think of energy is someone in a construction site, you know, probably wearing a hat and, you know, a jacket. And then you're like, well, if I'm not an engineer, I'm probably not going to do anything related to that. So why even bother? I think that the fact that we don't have, you know, more people going, you know, to high schools and to colleges to talk about, you know, opportunities in the energy sector is, I would say, like the number one barrier for having more women interested in that. And usually the women who are in the energy sector, they because of fate, they ended up working there. I know a lot of them that said like, well, I never thought about energy, but then somehow I had this, you know, this job opportunity, I applied, I got in, and that's why I'm in the sector. So I think that like trying to disseminate, you know, the importance of energy for, you know, a low carbon economy and for, you know, the future of all our countries is very important, like at an early stage in your career. And I would say that an additional barrier that I encountered in Brazil before even going to where I am today was the fact that I felt that most of these, you know, energy-related events were very focused on careers in STEM. And as a political scientist myself, I never felt that I could go anywhere in the energy sector not being an engineer. And this is one of the reasons that I'm here, that I came to New York to study at Columbia University to pursue, you know, a master's degree in energy, because I knew that if I didn't pursue this, it would be nearly impossible for me as someone, you know, from the humanities side to work in the energy sector. But nowadays it's interesting because I see that a lot of the the organization I currently work for, most of the people working there come from similar backgrounds as my own. And not just that, before I used to also work for a multilateral development bank, which is similar. Most people were economists, were, you know, had a background in international affairs, and they're occupying these positions. And many times they're the donors of the projects that, you know, maybe women working in STEM are putting together to be funded by these organizations. So just like, I think it's also like important to remember that non-STEM fields are, you know, equally important for the renewable energy sector. Although I still believe that we do need more policies to incentivize women to enter STEM careers, because I know that Brazil's below the global average in numbers. So I think that we also need a push in that sense in our country. But and then I think that this the fact that I decided to pursue a master's here just also proves another fact that was brought by the report, that women are usually have usually higher education levels, because, you know, maybe I could have just stayed in Brazil and tried to enter the energy sector, but I deep inside knew that I would not be able to if I didn't have a higher level of education. So this already, you know, proves that that most of the time we, again, coming back to like imposter syndrome, like sometimes we feel like we are not capable enough to be, you know, working in this area unless we're even more knowledgeable than men that are in like maybe entry-level positions. So we have to start at a very, you know, high position already in our minds. So and then maybe like the last point, I think that just the barriers here are very different. I feel that there are a lot more women in the United States in leadership positions in the energy sector, which is great, which is something to learn from. But I think that to pursue, you know, a master's degree or a doctorate degree, you don't necessarily have to leave the country. I think that Brazil has excellent, you know, courses. I came here for multiple reasons, and one of the reasons I came was the Women in Energy program, because I felt like I could learn a lot from them and bring back to Brazil this experience. But yes, definitely, we feel like this internal demand for more technical knowledge.
Thank you, Eduarda. It was just great to hear and to see that it was a live example of all that were in the study. Thank you very much to share with us. And there is a lot of points that you just mentioned that I would love to comment, but I have to go through. And I would like to give the link to this diversity only, just to comment really quickly that you say in diversity in all aspects, and even with the professional background. I myself, I'm a journalist by graduation, and I'm working in the solar energy, especially solar energy sector, for 10 years. So I understand what you're talking about, and it's very good and very important that we have all all this diversity in all terms for the energy transition, I believe. So, Natalia, regarding the recommendations to promote gender equality in the sector, what were in the studies, coming back to our study, the study's findings, please?
Oh, well, Paula, after all the talks that we had here, we can see that there is a lot of barriers and different industries in women who works in the solar energy sector around the world. But to promote agenda in Brazil, we organized some recommendations considering the barriers and the industry that the woman who participated in the research pointed out. So I'm just saying a few of the recommendations because there is a large board of recommendations in the study, and everyone can see. And after we can talk a little bit more about it, but I will say some points that were already said here. So one of the recommendations is to support specific programs about training and mentoring programs such as GWNET, and also another ones who can help women to attend and develop leadership in the sector. Also, we pointed out training for women, also given by women, to focus on the inclusion of Black, transgender, and other minorities, women who can work or would like to work in the sector. Also, we pointed out that it is very important to have data about who are working in the sector. And it's very important to have data surveys disaggregated by gender, race, or color and also include the men who work in the sector for the researchers and studies, that it's very important to have them with us to consider the change that we need. Also, we can say that it's need to give equal conditions regarding parenthood in the sector, also such as equal maternity and paternity leaves. And it's very important also, as Eduardo said, to hold events, debates, and encouraging organizations in the sector to adopt agenda program. Also, we would like to recommend that it's important to have trained, less educated women that could work in the sector. And for last but not least, to encourage create policies, reporting channels, and also support groups to combat labor violences. For this point, we say that it's very important to create other studies and also to have others research that we could find more data and see how it's the representation in Brazil sector about also with the participation of men to bring visibility and to see the difficulties that woman has in Brazil. So this way we can use the visibility of data to bring changes for the sector.
Thank you, Natalia. You're just right about bring the data to this issue. So I would like to come back now for the international perspective a little bit more. So Irene, GWNET also published a report in 2019. The name was Women for Sustainable Energy, Strategies to Foster Women's Talent for Transformation Change. And in that study, the authors present some strategies to include more women in the energy sector globally. And in the Brazil scenario, where women point out that 1 in every 3 institutions in the sector does not have any action or policy aimed to promoting gender, race, or diversity equality. So could you comment on some of these strategies that could be considering to build more inclusive workplace?
Yes, thank you for this question. Before I go to comment very quickly on some of the strategies, I would like to highlight one point that came out very strongly from our study as well, and that is that there are benefits for having women better represented in the sustainable energy sector. Of course, we who are working in this area, we know that it's a right of women to be present in whatever sector they wish to be present and to contribute on an equal par with men. So it's an issue of human rights, of women's rights, of equality in general, for sure. But it is also good for the bottom line of companies. It is good for the progress of national economies. It is good for sustainability at the global level. And institutions as diverse as McKinsey or the World Bank or the World Economic Forum in Davos make this point over and over again, that including women in the workforce of sustainable energy, but also in other sectors where they are underrepresented, simply brings a lot of excellent benefits for everybody. And when we talk about the energy transition, we know that energy transitions are deep societal transformations. So they are difficult to bring about, a lot of obstacles that need to be overcome. And it is imperative to draw on all the available talent to master these transitions. And obviously that talent means the talent of men and of women. I also like to harken back to what was said by Eduardo, and by Eduardo especially, who pointed out the diversity of opportunities in sustainable energy. They are much more diverse and multifold than the opportunities of employment in the old oil and gas sector. And they go far beyond STEM, because the energy transition is a deep societal transformation. Lots and lots of different jobs, career profiles, experiences, life experiences are needed. The collection of strategies that we showcase in our study to overcome the current underrepresentation of women is very varied. And it starts with opportunities that are given to women when they make their career choices, very much like the program Women in Energy that was mentioned also. But then it moves on through all the various areas which were mentioned as obstacles also. Because when we look at it and when we try to find one common denominator for all these obstacles, it's usually the unconscious bias against women based on gender stereotypes. So if we work through that issue of the gender stereotypes, we basically address all the necessary issues. And then we come to hiring practices that really need to be gender blind. Then we come to promotional practices once women have entered a company successfully, so that they can be promoted on an equal footing with men. The compatibility of life, responsibilities for the family and responsibilities for the job are very important for women. This is something that comes out again and again. And different companies, different countries take different approaches, but it's already important to bring that issue to the fore and to address it explicitly. I think, and not to be too long, also, it's important to remind ourselves that this is really a continuum from the unconscious bias against women to discrimination in the workplace to violence against women. So on every step along this line, you know, we have to be very careful because it's a very slippery slope. And we have lots of evidence of how unconscious bias and discrimination in the workplace opens the door for gender-related violence. So there too, there are many strategies that we have highlighted in the study to address this issue.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you very much for all that you just said. And I would like to talk now a little bit more with Celia about another study that we know that IRENA is currently developing a new study on gender perspective for the solar photovoltaic sector. This is very great. As we said, we need a lot of data, and then with all this information, we are tackling all these issues that come up. So tell us a little bit more about this new research, Celia. What are the outcome expected? And also, how do you perceive the importance of those type of studies, including MESol report that was just launched, the English version for building up more just, inclusive, and diverse renewable energy sector for all people at local and global level?
Well, thank you very much for the question. It gives me the chance to promote a little bit the solar PV survey. So we are collecting answers. So irena.org/solar gender survey for everybody working in the industry, not only women, we also want the voice of men. And this gives me also the opportunity to thank Kathleen and MESol because they have facilitated the Portuguese-Brazilian translation. So it's available in Portuguese. So there's no excuses for Brazilian people in the solar PV industry working to complete the survey. About the expected outcomes, personally, I think it will be very aligned with the obstacles of what we have been discussing. The difference is we're also not speaking out, like the difference with the wind sector, for example, is that we're trying to, or for the special nature of solar PV, we're trying to go beyond large scale. So we hope to have a lot of insights as well from men and women and organizations working in decentralized solar PV solutions. So hopefully we will have additional data to complement all the studies in this sense, because as we know, the access or decentralized solutions actually bring a lot of opportunities for women. And I think it's maybe a sector that women are seizing the opportunities more, and they face other barriers. Of course, they face barriers. Our previous analysis also focused on that. And they were, of course, flagged about the cultural and social norms. But at the same time, women tend to have a more decision-making position in the energy-related questions in the household. So sometimes this can bring benefits as well as job opportunities. So I hope we will have some new findings in that sense. And about the rest of the findings, we will see it's also a very, as I was mentioning before, a difficult time with unfortunately the pandemic going on. We know that the whole workforce have experienced a lot of challenges. In solar PV in particular, I think the rooftop solar installations suffered worldwide, especially with the lockdowns and the manufacturing and transport of materials had suffered a lot for a few months. So I don't know what exactly expect on that. I would also like to mention that, again, as it's very beneficial to have a new report, in this case for the Brazil workforce. So hopefully we will have a way to compare from regions, for countries, and the analysis. And this brings me to your second question about the importance of this local and global analysis, which I think we all have mentioned it in some way or another with some words or another. Gender disaggregated data is fundamental. It's not possible to fully measure how is the progress towards the broader SDGs or local targets or different situations that we want without this type of information. again, without data, it's not difficult, maybe impossible to make effective policies, analytical assessments in order to have a better engendering of the transition, and or how to have a more comparative assessment between women and men in the different communities or parts of the world. Sound policy formulations are hampered by the lack of information. So about gender reality. So again, it's without this disaggregated data from any type, it's very difficult to have some type of assessment and some type of effective way to improve. And therefore, of course, any of these global or local initiatives and reports or any type of data collected that can be done from industries itself or organizations itself is critical. And moreover, I would like to also say that it triggers a conversation. Like the fact that we just have a report or we have just one number, it triggers the conversation. We create webinars, so more and more people are aware. And this is beneficial, and not only for the global discourse, but I also think for women. So women feel that we're not alone, that there's more women that face these challenges, that there's more women that have those obstacles. And maybe we also change our self-perception, because I think it's something that in our reports was flagged, but I think sometimes it's actually the biggest obstacles is ourselves, because we sometimes limit ourselves just because we have been raised in a culture and a social situation that maybe put us some boundaries, internal boundaries, and we just integrate it, unfortunately. So again, this is really important, no matter how big, how global, how local. I think any initiative, any report, any data is critical and important.
Thank you, Celia. I just have to agree with you at this end. And I would like to invite our audience to give their questions here in the chat. I see that they were quite shy until now. There is no question, but if you are just take your time with us and have any question to our guests here, please, is the last chance to write it down, your question now. And until we don't have any comment, I would like to ask if any of our guests would like to comment this, what Celia said, or other points before. I think Kathleen just maybe have something to add, and then the others, please be free to make questions or comments now. Kathleen, please.
Yes, thank you, Paula. And yes, I would like to build up a little bit on what Celia just brought. Regarding, well, if we don't have disaggregated data, we don't have visibility, it's hard to draw some policies and understand what's going on and where to go for. And well, this is the first study regarding women in the solar sector here in Brazil. So there are a lot that we wanted to dive deep into. And this survey, we just asked directly to the women from the sector what were their perspectives. But it's very, very important to hear also from men. And that's also very, very interesting what Irene studied in their survey. They asked for men perspective, women perspective, and also organization context. That's something we hope in the near future to draw something like that, to understand better and better the context here in Brazil. And that was also something that was brought out by our respondents when we asked about the needs. They said that bringing men more for the discussion and including them in the discussion is also something very important that they find. And that connects also to the unconscious bias that Irene brought as well. We have to talk more about that, because we all have those unconscious bias, and we need to talk and bring that up and understand why we have some actions. And yeah, I was just aiming to make some comments like that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. And as we see here, we have João in our team here, as you just mentioned about the men participation, and it's very important, and I agree with you. And just to mention, like João in this study, he was with us all the time, coordinating this study. I don't know if João, you want to say something, please feel free as a man here in this debate, but otherwise, if other of the colleagues want to add any point, please just raise your hand and I can give you the word.
Yeah, thank you for that, Paula. I just want to reinforce the necessity of data because we do need to build policies, whether they're public policies or company policies on top of data. And companies often appreciate also more data to base their HR policies or the salary policies and so on. So I think a study such as this is very important, and how we see that is synchronized with international studies, and how the same things as Irene was saying appear over and again along with the research and or other research. They pointing out on the same situation. So I think we are on the right track with this study, and we are hopeful to perhaps to somehow make it like a regular thing, you know, that maybe also IRENA could contribute to make it regular. Also, we as CFF or other institutions could make it regular, because we need to continue monitoring the sector and to reach this equality better. Thank you.
Thank you, João, for your comments. Thank you very much. I think Irene, you'd like to add something as well, please?
Yes, thank you. No, just to emphasize also the need for leadership from the top. You know, whoever or whatever institution is at the top, be it the government, be it the leadership of a company, be it an industry association. I think industry associations also play a very important role, because they see a bit more than just one company. They see the sector and the direction the sector is going. So I think industry associations can play a very important role in shedding light on the difficult situations and on solutions that can assist to make the sector more inclusive. That is very important. And the other aspect that I wanted to highlight more, because it comes out very nicely out of this event as well, is how important it is that women that are involved in the sector, that are invested in the sector, that want the sector to do good and to prosper, for the sake of the sector, but also for the sake of the energy transition that needs to happen for all of society and the entire globe, that those women strengthen each other and encourage each other. You know, I mean, this is a beautiful event that you have put on, and I want to pay tribute to all the work and the preparation that went into it. But it also shows how much passion the women have that are involved, and how strong they are. And of course, partnering with men is very important, but strengthening each other and moving forward together as much as possible, I think that's very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. I'm just agree with all that you say, and very, very nice to see all this passion. And we see when women are talking about the sector, how they are passionate by it. And so if we don't have any more comments, if any of you want to add anything else, I would like to go into the end of this event. But before we end this event, I would like to thank you very much deeply, all of you that were here. And I'd like to thank you all the audience that were taking the time with us here. And if you like to dig more deep on the results of the study, as I mentioned before, you can find the link here in our chat. This is available on the C40 website. And also the link will be in the description of the video and the MESol social network. Follow MESol Network as well, a little bit of marketing here for MESol. If you are interested to know, to keep in date about gender in the solar energy sector, follow MESol Network. And this study was also published in Portuguese and was launched during a webinar on the beginning of June here in MESol Network YouTube as well. So you just, if you're interested in see the Portuguese version, just take a look on the previous video here. And this was another step to start this dialogue about the participation of women in solar energy sector. Much more will come for sure. And I hope I can join other events and panel discussion just like that. It was really, really love. I really thank you for the invitation to be here. I just took a really good time now. Stay in tune, everybody, and thanks. Take care and see you next time. So bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.